as a separate period.
Thank you.
No, thanks very much. My name is Hankim Patlele. I want to ask the question relative to the topic because it says the significance of institutional heritage and the relevance in contemporary society. So we are a democratic South Africa. You were the Vice Chancellor of Rhodes University. Young people in around 2014, they went to the streets and said the Rhodes must fall. How do young people say Rhodes must fall today and we still conserve the status quo of maintaining the name of university after Rhodes? I think in 2004, 2005, the University of the North changed into University of Limpopo. So this shows how much it's possible to change the name of a university from a reactionary figure to a revolutionary figure. Yeah. So that's number one that I wanted to ask. On the side of Prof Mohalong, I didn't know but that you are the first Vice Chancellor to deliver medicine after post-democratic South Africa. And I know you served for a very long time. Please, just like President Zuma gave free education when he was outgoing, can you give us engineering and natural sciences? Can you please, Prof? I mean, we're saying, just like President Zuma gave us free education as an outgoing president of the country, can you one day give us...
Interesting, because it links to what you said earlier on about, transformation, heritage. And then when I think the lawyers are here, there is a case, the Geleke Cancer versus the chairperson of the University of Stellenbosch. And that particular case really gave a picture or a reflection of the difficulty, or complexity of heritage, transformation, and also making sure that now you do not dilute heritage when you talk about transformation, because that's exactly what, in a sense, what he's saying. So I thought perhaps it will say, go ahead.
So, to take your first one, right? So I think maybe I should preface this by saying that as important as humans are and leadership is, leadership makes a difference, right? A leadership can destroy a university. We've seen that. Or leadership can maintain the university and take it to higher levels, right? So don't assume that leadership only builds. Leadership can destroy also. We're suffering because of certain leadership in this country, right? So when you so the important point about that is humans make history, but not in conditions of their own choosing, right? So don't expect miracles either. Limpopo has to work within that. Limpopo can be part of a movement that says we must stop that. That's what Jacques Gerwel said in 1987. The University of the Western Cape is going to be the intellectual home of the left, because UCT is linked to English capitalism, Stellenbosch is linked to Afrikaans capitalism, and there's one movement in this country that has no universities. It's called the Democratic Movement. And so UWC attached itself to that, right? Incredible leadership. That's why I ended up going to that university as a young person. That's the only place I wanted to be. Spent 10 brilliant years there, right? So when you come to Rhodes now, let me answer your question directly, right? I was going to a meeting of the Committee of Heads of Research and Technology. That's all the presidents of the SRC, MRC, and so on. And as I'm walking there, Paul Jordan, who was the head of Mintech, shouts out and says, Saleem, congratulations. We've excited. You're the next Vice Chancellor of Rhodes, the first black person. When are we coming to the renaming ceremony? I shouted back, not in the first 5 to 10 years. Right? Now you might think I'm a sellout. That's fine. You can think that. For me, there were more important things at Rhodes than changing the name. And what name do you want to change it to? So that's your name. There are other people who want Ruth first. There are other people who want other names. Biko is from Ginsberg. He's not directly from the Makanda area. So what about Makanda? Why? So you see what I'm trying to say? These are contested. And in your first period as a vice-chancellor, you want to unify that campus. You want to take it forward around transformation issues, and the name thing is going to kill you. Because even the black students will oppose it. You know that. Not clever blacks. Black students more generally. Because they think the name Rhodes University is an international, and I'm going to use a word that they use, which I hate, brand. Right? So you may not like it, but you've got to be very strategic around these things. So for me, for my first 10 years, the most important thing was starting the process of transformation. And I always maintained the name would take care of itself. Because what kind of name do you want to give it? Steve Biko, when it's a colonial racist institution. When you come out of that, then you can start thinking about names. Right? Because otherwise it's just a token gesture. We're calling Rhodes Steve Biko, but nothing's changed. Right. The other thing I was asked before I went there, when will you apologize for all the terrible things Rhodes did to black people? I said, I must apologize. Me, as a black South African, I must apologize personally. So they thought that in my inaugural in September I would apologize. I refused to apologize for the institution. But when the SRC came to me in 2008, said, we think we'd like to rename the Student Union building the Steve Biko building, and it's a prominent building. I said to them, you have my support, but now I want your support. That's the day we will publicly apologize for all the terrible things Rhodes has done. And we will acknowledge our shame and we'll draw a line. That's what happened in September 2008, 2 years after I became Vice-Chancellor. I was not prepared to apologize. Who's Saleem to apologize? The institution must apologize, not the Vice-Chancellor. The institution is the Senate and the Council. So when I found the right time, with the right support, we went to Senate. And a senior person sitting there in the front, professor of physics, stood up and said, Vice-Chancellor, all the things you're telling us, is this true? I said, ask the professor of history, Paul Malem. He helped do us research. That professor, I thought it was going to be a fight. When that professor, white guy, very famous astronomer, stood up and said, we have no option but to apologize. End of the story. There were no fights. Council approved it, and the apology was made. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that these are 10,000-meter races. You don't need Usain Bolts for this. You need Ethiopian and Kenyan runners. So when you become a vice-chancellor, you can't do it all in 3 months or 6 months. You must have a sense of 10 years of what your agenda is and not to be moved from that agenda because you know what you're going there to do and so on, right? So the name issue, it was starting to become an issue in my second term. So I had a 7-year term and then they offered me a 10-year term after that at Rhodes. I said, no, thank you. I'm going somewhere else. So in my second term, I would have made it an issue. And I'll be honest about that. If they did not change the name, I would have walked. I would have resigned. That was going to be a make or break issue. I can't make it a make or break issue in the first 5 years because if I go, what's going to happen? We're back to where we are. I had to secure what was going to come after me and so on with Dr. Mabuzela, right? So my sons want nothing to do with Rhodes. And I respect them. Because if Rhodes thinks by not changing the name, they're going to curry favor in some quarters, they're not recognizing they're losing support in other quarters by not changing the name. So I would like its name to change. And I think the decision that council did under a black chair of council, when they voted to retain the name, was a terrible mistake. Now, where are the students at Rhodes? Because that's a very powerful force. Have they got it on the agenda? But the surveys we did, my friend, in Smuts house and all that, was frightening. The black students don't want to change the names. And it's not only clever blacks. You must know the terrain you're working on. People they get emotionally tied up with the names. We are Smuts boys, we are Botha boys, and so on. You say, like, guys, what are you talking about, Botha boys and Smuts boys? The power of reproduction and so on. Right? So that's the big name issue. The second part was, just remind me again.
Engineering.
Engineer, okay, good one.